I was angry, quite frankly.
Mm-hmm.
And I would, step into these jobs thinking I didn't need to change. I just needed to find the right job at the right place that valued what I had to offer. And now I'm realizing, no, it was me. I was the common denominator at all these different jobs. So something within me or something I was doing was not working.
So we worked together in 2020. Tell the audience a little bit about what were some of the challenges that you were having that made you want to reach out and change, really?
Well, it's interesting because I didn't fully see the challenges that I needed to work on when I first reached out to you. You're not the first coach that I've worked with. I've worked with a couple of others that have given me or to help me position myself to advance within my career as an in-house lawyer. And that's what I thought I was getting with you. I was ready to go to the next level, go from director to an executive level. And you were outspoken and direct in some of what I saw on social media. So I thought, she seems like she's a good person to work with. And I seemed comfortable with you as a fellow woman of color. So that was also important to me. But after our first conversation, I kind of walked away thinking, I might need a little bit more help. Because you really had me thinking about some internal work that I needed to do, and that me being able to advance in my career was actually more within my control than I initially thought. It wasn't just executive presence, which I thought was what I needed to advance. I actually needed to do some internal work within me, which in turn would allow me to show up differently for those opportunities that would kind of unfold on their own, as opposed to me feeling like I'm chasing after something and I need to create this persona of myself that fits within what I thought was required within the corporate environment to advance.
Yes, that's so good. So let's talk about executive presence with what you thought it was and now what you know it to be.
I mean, initially I thought it was showing up to meetings prepared to put on a show.
Yep. Yes.
And to put on a show in a way that appealed to the individuals that were at the table. Mm-hmm. More often than not, they didn't look like me, and they were typically male. So I needed to know how to show up in a way where I can be seen and viewed as an effective leader and not the angry Black woman. And to be viewed as somebody that was, productive and, it's not just wearing the suit and pulling your hair back in a neat ponytail.
Yeah.
I wasn't on the golf course making deals.
Yep.
So I needed to figure out how to get to the table and highlight my skills in a way for people to say, okay, I think she's ready to advance. That's what I thought. After the work that I've done with you so far, I realize it's really not that. I think a part of it now is how I show up and how I determine my own worth. I think before I was allowing others to determine my worth, as opposed to me knowing my worth and just showing up in that person that know I need to be valued and not letting others dictate that for me. And I think showing up with that confidence, knowing my worth, so then other people are like, wow, I can see it now with her. Before I felt like I needed to ask for permission, whereas now I'm showing up knowing my value, and it's easier for folks to really just kind of come on board and give me room and space to do what it is I can do to, advance within my career. I know that's a mouthful. Does that make sense?
No, I love it. One of the things that I love about what you said, so yes, we should be clear and most women should be following, because we keep thinking that as women of color and then just women in general, and then Black women on top of that, that executive presence means being like them.
Right.
Being more like them, crossing your arms and furrowing your brow and being more productive, when that's not really what it means. And if women haven't progressed in the past 200 years, or especially with all the things that are going on in the past 20 years, with all of this training where we're talking about it, we're learning the wrong things. So you talked about when you just showed up as yourself, that made you more confident. And then when you saw within yourself, they saw it. Tell the audience a little bit more about that.
For me, a part of it was I was waiting for other people to tell me I was great, as opposed to me telling myself, I know I'm great, and just showing up in my greatness. Waiting for others to give me permission to be great when I said, now I'm great and I can step into that. And to me, I think a lot of that is worthiness kind of issues. And also just, I tend to be a bit of an introvert. So when I was in those scenarios where I felt like I had something to offer, I felt like I needed to wait for someone to give me permission to speak up. And I would shrink and become small, as opposed to now I feel as though I know that what I have to say has value. So I need to share that. And I'm finding that the more that I share, the more that people look to me and ask me my opinion, quite frankly. Whereas before I was just sitting around waiting for people to ask and wondered why they never asked. And exactly. So I needed to do my part to show up, show what it is that I have to offer, and people tend to respond better in that way. And I think a part of it too is I have a different perspective. I think I always had, I was angry, quite frankly. Mm-hmm. And I would, step into these jobs thinking I didn't need to change. I just needed to find the right job at the right place that valued what I had to offer. And now I'm realizing, no, it was me. I was the common denominator at all these different jobs. So something within me or something I was doing was not working. So I think that was part of it too. Like I had limiting beliefs about myself and my ability, which in turn blocked opportunities for me to advance. So I was limiting myself. Not to say that systemic racism doesn't exist, but I see the role that I played in limiting myself. And I'm starting to remove those barriers, and I'm seeing what comes from that and the benefit of that.
Woo! That's what I'm talking about. Yes.
But I had to do the work first. I had to do some real healing with trauma to get me there. It wasn't easy. And as you know, I'm a bit of a yogi. I've had other coaches. I've gone to therapy. I've done yoga. I used to meditate, maybe not on a regular basis, but I never did this type of level of work to heal prior trauma, to really release and move on, when I thought I did, honestly. And I think I also have a different definition for what strength means. Before I thought I needed to kind of push through situations and circumstances that I didn't like, and never really understood what it means to really take care of myself. To me now, I view vulnerability differently, and I view being able to say, no, I can't do this is probably takes more strength than to keep on saying yes and pushing through scenarios that just don't work for me.
No, I love it because you're dropping so many gems here, because we always, think that they're trying to lock us out of the room. They are against us. Look, let's be clear, which is a strong narrative in the State of the Women in the Workplace from McKinsey. Organizations need to do more for women of color. It's in all of the articles, Forbes articles, Bain studies. Managers need to be more receptive to what women of color have to offer. Well, they are receptive, but women of color sitting in the room waiting for somebody to ask them the question.
Right.
This is what I understand and what I know to be true. Everybody's going through something. So we look at our senior leaders like maybe one day they're going to change and acknowledge me. No, they got squirrels running around in their heads too. They have problems too. What are we going to do differently to make them look up, be like, wait, did she just start talking? And they hired you for your talent.
Right.
That you're keeping to yourself. So it's a self-perpetuating disaster.
Yes. And it's definitely not a good scenario where you're looking for others to tell you what your worth and value is. That's not a good way to enter into a situation. I mean, it just doesn't end well. I mean, that was what was creating the anger within me. When I would look around and say, okay, I have 2 advanced degrees, or I've been practicing longer than others, but I seem to not be able to get into a role that really reflects my ability. So stop accepting the roles, right? Start really setting goals and moving towards them.
But you were accepting the roles, but you weren't showing up with your how you were in person wasn't matching the paper.
Agreed. I agree.
Because you were waiting for them to ask you, and they didn't ask, so they kept moving on without you, and you were like, no, wait, aren't you going to ask me? And now
Right.
which made you angry.
Yes.
So even when you did talk, you were so mad.
Yeah, it didn't come out well. Let's just say that. It didn't make for pleasant experiences. And at the end of the day, who wants to work with some? And then the thing is, what I realized too is that there was resentment that was building up, right? And as much as I felt like some people didn't know my value, I started to treat other people in a way that wasn't nice either. Like I would just be looking for the opportunity to be like, see, you don't know nothing. And I'm going to highlight that to others. When, I mean, I didn't want to be treated that way. So why was I reacting that way? I mean, that doesn't make for anyone saying, yeah, let's vote for Mitchelle to lead more people and add to her team. I mean, it just doesn't add up. But I was just so deep in my own pity that I just couldn't get out of my own way.
That's so good. Whew, you said pity. Because it's anger, resentment, hate. And it's not hate in a bad way, but it is hate because you're mad because you have all this talent and nobody sees it. And then it becomes haterade.
Yes.
and then pity. And what I love about what you were sharing is you did it. Like, hello. That's so I'm you know, I get excited, so I start screaming. So I'm gonna calm down. The audio engineer is gonna have to lower my volume because I start screaming. I get excited. But it's like we're creating all of these scenarios, but we're blaming other people and we're not moving ahead.
Yeah.
And we're not getting in a C-suite. So every time I read all these articles and all of these people are pointing fingers at everybody else, it's 20,000 people pointing at other fingers. And I'm the one like this. Just go ahead and turn that finger around. It's you.
Yeah. And it's funny that you say that because now you've helped me to kind of slow down my thought process a bit. And I start to dissect situations. Like when I feel myself getting angry, I start to think about, why am I angry? And there would be scenarios where I would see other women in particular that are in higher roles. And I would look and I would hate, to your point. But now I'm like, don't hate. Like, figure out how to emulate. That's my thing now.
I love it.
And it's like, go talk to the woman and find out, how did she get to where she is now? As opposed to sitting from afar, all upset and angry. And the anger is not doing anything for me. When I can turn that around and say, step up to the woman and say, look, I see where you are in your role. How did you get there? I mean, that would help me more than just sitting, be feeling small, not saying anything, and just being angry.
So now that you have the clarity, now you can have the conversations.
Yes.
Without blaming. Because the women, like, everybody's going through something, but it takes you to be like, and then what did you find the receptivity of the women? Because there are a lot of women who hate on the women at the higher levels. And I'm like,
yes,
they'll talk to you right. If you go ask them a question, they'll give you advice. If you're worth pouring into and you're not coming in day one, pointing the finger, talking about them.
Right. And I think that's the thing, right? It's not me saying, for example, a woman in color in a senior level, going up to her and saying, oh my God, how did you get past the systemic racism? I don't think it's that. I mean, I think the approach is, I have hopes of potentially being in a particular position such as yours. How did you get there? Do you have any tips? I mean, to your point, the approach makes a difference. But I was so angry that even if I were to approach someone at that point, I'd be putting out negativity. And now I'm realizing that comes back to me in a negative way, and it's not productive.
So talk to us about what was that, because we talked about where you were and then where you are, which was not an easy path.
No.
You did a lot of work.
I did.
and it was all internal. What was that? What was maybe one thing that you did or one thing that I said that made a click for you that really turned the light bulb on? It was like this. It's me.
I mean, I think there were a couple of things. I think the 21-day forgiveness challenge was definitely a point that caused me to start reflecting, because after you forgive someone, then you have to release some of that anger. And I needed to accept that, that individual did the best that he or she can do, and I needed to forgive them. So if I forgive Tom, I can't be mad at Tom anymore and carry that anger with me. So releasing some of that anger, it freed up my heart for other stuff. So I think the forgiveness challenge was a big part for me. And the other thing was doing the work of meditating daily and taking walks outside in nature. Doing those activities helped me to clear my mind and to have those conversations with myself, to dissect maybe why I was reacting the way I was reacting. Like before, I was just in the day-to-day activities, going through my to-do list, where I didn't even acknowledge those times where I felt myself getting angry and the tension in my body and the tension in my chest. Whereas now I'm mindful of that, and I can just, take a few deep breaths, don't allow that to escalate, and make sense of why that I feel the way I feel.
So I hear a large part of that was, one, you had to acknowledge that you were angry. And we don't want to do that, because anger is our normal. If I'm baseline angry, what's the difference between level 8 angry and level 10? But don't you dare tell me as a sister that I'm an angry Black woman, because you would get cussed out. Like, it's not might, you would get the business.
And I think that's what it is. I was always offended when people would say that to me. And it got bad when your kids look at you and tell you that you're always angry.
That ain't funny.
And that just made me more angry, as opposed to me saying, yeah, I am angry. I have reason to be, and I'm trying to work on that.
Mm-hmm. No, I mean, this, we're justified in our anger.
Yes.
But then, because of what's happening, and because you're not getting ahead, and because you do have, people who aren't as qualified and they're not as smart as you. So externally, you're justified in your anger for all the things that they're doing to you. And they're not asking you to come into the room, and they're not asking you to network, and they're not having the conversations with you, and they're not asking you for your feedback, and they're not asking. So we're creating the cycle to be justified in our anger, and then don't even know we're angry. So it's you mad as HELL. That's one. And then over time, so it wasn't I'm angry, now I can see it. It was, okay, I'm angry, so now let me dissipate this anger, because now I have to work on it. And you were deeply rooted. You got the grip on anger. You got some people who kind of rub the tree, and you got some people who like this, and you were like this.
Yes.
And so it was like the peeling your fingers off of the things that you were angry about. And then, and what I loved about what you said, forgiveness is free. Walking was free. And then meditating was free. So this isn't about going out and doing cryogenics. And I see these people doing these outrageous things. And I'm like, you can chill out for free.
And that's the thing, right? I was the person that would get a regular massage. I was going to hot yoga and spin class. And what I realized through working with you, it felt good in the moment, but within 10 minutes of me being done with that activity, I would look at my work phone, an email would trigger me, and I'd go right back to being that angry person.
Right back in the hole.
So, I clearly wasn't getting to the root of the issues that were causing me to be angry. And I think that's the difference now. It's still hard. Don't think I'm not perfect. There's still those times where I get upset, but I can make sense of why and turn it into something that's productive, as opposed to this cycle of just being angry.
Lastly, get your pay gap calculator to see how your pay compares to the market value of what others are getting paid. Text pay gap, all one word, to 66866. Again, pay gap to 66866, or use the link below this video or podcast. Get this insight, use it, and get paid what you desire and deserve. See you in the next episode.